Welcome back to the podcast, Julie and Yue of Dateable. You guys are my first returning guest.
Oh,
Woo!
Yeah.
We
I feel
feel so
honored.
honored.
Wow.
Well, I feel honored to be talking about your new book, Dateable. I'm showing it up for YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can watch. You can see me holding it up. I mean, guys? This is amazing.
Oh, that
Thank
came
How do
out
you
you
so
feel?
today.
much.
Finally.
Okay. So I want to jump right in here. But before we do, I have a question I ask all my guests, and that is, what are you being intentional about right now?
Mm,
Oh,
I love that.
that's a very good question. I'm being intentional about getting enough sleep. I have gone down the rabbit hole of how important sleep is, and we all are different in how many hours is required for healthy sleep. So I know that my requirement is 8 hours a night. That is minimum for someone like me. So
What's your bedtime?
between according to my Aura ring, it's between 10:15 to 11:15. That's my optimal
Okay.
time. So I try to get in bed by 10:30 and fall asleep by 10:45.
Nice.
Okay.
I wish I could stay up that late.
Really? That's late?
I'm like a small child. I want to be asleep at like 8 o'clock if it were up to me.
I'm jealous. I'm such a night owl. I can't sleep past I feel like 11 is early for me. I'm so
Wow.
Really?
Look
jealous.
at you guys. Night owls. Julie, what about you? What are you being intentional about?
I'll be intentional about not texting UA after 11. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, it's fine. I'm just not texting you back.
You're on
Do not
sleep
disturb.
mode. I was gonna say self-care, which is a little sleep falls into that, but just in general, I think, it's been a busy time for us and just taking a step back a little and also acknowledging work. I think it's easy. Self-care, I think, can mean multiple different things, like taking care of your health and fitness
Mhm.
and all of that, getting enough sleep, but also self-care of pumping yourself up too and not always
Ooh, I
looking for
love
what's
that.
next,
Mhm.
because I think I can go down that path.
I think a lot of us can relate to that, like, especially if you're a type A, ambitious
Yes.
person, or just like
Yep.
if you like achieving anything in life, like it's hard to kind of take a break when you've hit a milestone. Be like, okay, you don't have to jump to the next thing. You can
Right.
just bask in the glory of your book. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so excited about it. Okay, so I have so many questions about the book. My number one question though is, what do you hope readers will get out of it?
Hmm.
We've actually talked about this in length before even starting the book. And we said the feeling we would love for everyone to take away is this feeling of hope. Because we know modern dating is fucked up and there's a lot of things that can go wrong and there's a lot of disappointment. But it's also such a beautiful journey we can go on. And it's such a privilege that we get to use. So after reading the book, at least from our editor's point of view, she said it felt like a hug. So and I think that's a great way to encapsulate the feeling we want people to have.
I love that, and as someone who did finish the book, I agree. It does feel like a hug at the end. It does kind of, like, really set readers up for success, and you've just done a really good job with that.
I think the other piece too is this feeling that everyone is dateable. I don't think the idea is, I mean, the name is How to Be Dateable, so maybe it's a misnomer a little, but it's everyone's already dateable. It's just modern dating that's getting in our way a lot of times. And, with self-help, we feel there's not this feeling like you should change who you are or be a different person. It's maybe just getting out of your own way and leaning into your strengths, not changing who you are.
Mm.
So well put, and I agree. It's like we're all dateable at our core, but there is a lot of BS that we have to
Yes.
put up with within ourselves and other people in the dating
Mhm.
process, and it's like your book is a really good roadmap of how to navigate through that. I mean, it's literally there's a maze on the cover. Like,
Literally.
It's
literally.
the way out of the modern dating madness.
Can you talk a little bit more about what being dateable means to you guys?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to where we're saying everyone is dateable, but it's removing the roadblocks and what is getting in your way to recognize you're dateable. And being dateable could mean many different things for different people, but at the core of the definition is really about being vulnerable and being authentic and being open to taking risks in getting to putting yourself out there and getting to know people and deepening connections at the same time growing and expanding who you are.
It was so beautiful. Julie, anything to add?
think we're just at this tipping point with dating, and I'm thinking about, like, clearly you're on the same page with dating intentionally, right? It's all about, like, how do I show up as my authentic self? How do I lead with my intentions and my needs and all of that? And I think that's a huge shift from where dating has been in the past. It's all about, like, how do I look hot and how do I look this way and act this way? And I think for me, what dateable means is reconnecting to the core of who you are and being like, I am a catch and I'm lucky to, someone is lucky to be with
Yeah.
me, and having that confidence and leading that way and inviting people that are at your level, that see you for who you are, that you don't have to convince that you're dateable and someone they should be with. That to me is what dateable is.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing from you guys, it's not just about being dateable, it's also feeling dateable.
Yes, state
And
of
that is
mind.
yeah, the state of mind, and your book definitely dives very deep into a lot of these areas, and I'm excited to get more into it. But I do wanna know more thing, and that is, what is something that surprised you in the process of writing the book that you did not
Mm.
expect about the book writing process or, like, the content or anything?
Oh, about the book writing process itself, I didn't expect it to take so long, but at the same time, the time went by so fast. I mean, our
Yeah.
pub date got pushed back, and that happens to a lot of authors, and at the time, we are like, "Oh, it's gonna take forever, like, it's another 6 months out," and now that the book is out, it feels like it came way faster than we anticipated.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
And it was supposed to come out originally in the fall, and the reason it got pushed back was the election, and looking back in that hindsight, it's like, "Oh my god, it's such a better time now
Yeah,
in the new year,"
thank
and,
goodness.
it's just
Yeah, that's
totally right energy.
I could see how that is kinda throws a wrench in publishing or really anything, like, having an election. Yeah, it's a little dicey. Wow. Well, I am so proud of you guys, and, right now, anyone listening, please go order the book on Amazon or is it on your website?
Yeah, howtobedateable.com, it links out to
Okay,
all of them so people can find it wherever they get books.
amazing. So one section that really jumped out at me was the section where you talk about relationship chicken.
Mm,
So what is relationship chicken?
our favorite term.
Have you ever played the game of chicken? Do people
Yes.
still play that game? Yeah, you, like, try to get as close as possible to your opponent without actually hitting them. I mean, that's the concept behind relationship chicken is in dating, we do everything opposite of what we do to get into a relationship. We try to not show our cards, not be the first one to reveal our emotions and feelings for someone. And then we try to one down each other, meaning like if someone exhibits bad dating behavior, we feel like that compels us to go one level lower. So if someone doesn't text you back for 24 hours, you may be compelled to say, "Oh, I'll wait 2 days or I'll wait 3 days to text them back." And it's like, okay, if the goal is to get into a relationship for most people who are dating, then why are we exhibiting these behaviors that are actually opposite of what you want in a partnership?
Yeah, this really resonated with me because I do see this a lot with people I talk to all the time, like, and it's just kind of like, "What are we doing here? Why are we so afraid?" So what can you talk a little bit more about what is the impact that relationship chicken is having on modern relationships, and why is it so common?
I mean, I think the impact is that we're at a standstill because
Mhm.
in the past, relationship chicken was never like a good thing in general, but there were more defined gender roles. There were more, I don't know, this is how dating works, like more definition. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we're going to a world that you can pave your own way, but that's uncharted territory for many of us.
Mm,
And especially in today's gender dynamics, I'll speak on hetero terms. For anyone that's not in this, like, you're lucky, I would say, in this part of things, but the fact that just right now, like, no one knows how to act and what to do, and by playing chicken where both people are just like, "I don't wanna make the first move," or, "I don't wanna be the one to define the relationship and tell them where I'm at," then just nothing happens, and I think that's why dating is so hard for people, that it feels like there's no movement a lot of times.
it kinda reminds me of, like, when you are applying for a job, it's like the rule that you're not supposed to say what salary you want, or, like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
whoever says
Yeah.
the first number is the one who, like, loses the power,
Mhm.
basically, but, like, dating doesn't have to be like
Mm-mm.
that. It's
No.
not the same.
I mean, it's all around disconnection. I think that's the
Right.
part when you and I were thinking about, like, okay, we've been doing this podcast for 10 years. We've talked to thousands of daters and experts. What have we like taken away? And what
Mhm.
we noticed were like the people that were actually having like the best results in dating. And even for the two of us, when we started to change our ways and forge that own path, and really break free of these games and ways of doing dating and feeling like we have to date a certain way because that's what you do and that's
Mhm.
how you act and all these like unspoken rules or maybe even spoken rules in some
Mhm.
cases. That's when things started to happen, and like all this is doing is keeping us stuck when we're abiding by, you know, the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, like you say the word game, and it's like, I think sometimes if you're playing relationship chicken, you might not know you are because it
No.
doesn't
Mm-mm.
necessarily feel like a game because you're like, well, I'm stepping back. I want to see how they act. I want to see what they do. I want to see if they ask for my number or like they show interest in me. Then
Yeah.
by doing that, you are not showing interest. You are
Right.
silent.
I think
Like,
a lot of people will be like, "I don't play games anymore. That's the old school way of dating." But
Mhm.
if you are waiting for a text, not telling someone how you feel, you're playing a game.
Yeah,
yeah,
this is the conundrum that we face. People feel like they want to have control in dating. So therefore they play these games because they think it puts them in the driver's seat. When in reality, you're actually relinquishing that control to the person you're playing games with. One prime example, had a girlfriend who went on 3 really hot and heavy dates with someone, met his friends, met some of his family, and then he went
damn.
cold. He went cold for a week. The week before they had met up, he wanted to hang out that following weekend. So that whole week, she kept thinking, I'm just going to make all the plans this weekend. So when he does come back to me, I'm going to be the one in control and say no because I already made other plans. In the
Right.
back of my head, I was like, you just ruined your weekend because now you're waiting for him to text you. You're resenting the people you're going to hang out with this weekend because you wish you were hanging out with him.
And
So
looking at your
basically,
phone the whole time.
exactly. So who is in control? You actually put the control back in his hands and he didn't even know it.
Wow, that is such a great example to illustrate what this is. Like, it truly is just about control. And I feel like, you mentioned driver's seat. And maybe
Yeah.
I like to think of dating as collaborative. It's like less of a
Mhm.
driver passenger, more of like a canoe situation
Yeah.
or like a
I like
kayak,
that. I
like
like that.
a tandem bike. Like you both have to be working together if you want to go anywhere. Versus,
Mm,
yeah, like figuring out who's in the driver's seat. It's like meanwhile, no one's even getting in the car.
I
Like,
agree. I
that's
mean, I
right.
think like there's a difference of being in the driver's seat of your own love life and like
right.
taking control of like my actions, or not even, it's not even expecting necessarily someone to do it the exact way you want to, but it's saying like by taking control, it's like, I know I want a partner that does this or I feel this way. And if someone doesn't measure up, then you are like, okay, I can move on. I can keep finding the right person. But that's different than saying like I'm in the driver's seat of this relationship and it's a one-way street. It's I like the canoe
Yeah.
analogy a lot better for that piece.
I had someone reach out to me last week and they were like, "Well, I initiated wanting to hang out, but then he made all the plans. Is this a bad sign?" I'm like, "No, this is exactly what you want.
Yeah,
This is collaborative. You're saying you wanna hang out, he's yes-anding you and making plans. That's sexy." Like,
that's
great.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if someone didn't, we'd probably be complaining about that. Like this
Right.
person doesn't take initiative or make plans. And also the root of a question like that, this is something that we try to get people out of their heads about is like if you have to ask someone who's not in this exchange about whether this is a good exchange or not, you might as well go to the source. Like if you could be vulnerable and be like, I've never had someone make plans like this before. Do you normally do this? And I like it, but I was also taken aback. That lessens the situation from is this good or bad? There's no qualifier. It's just information.
I love that advice, UA. Like, I love just the idea of like if your instinct is to go message you guys or me or
Yeah.
Oh
any
my
other
god,
Yes.
yes.
like any
Yes.
other dating podcaster, maybe type out the message and then rework it to send it to them. Be like, hey, like
Yes.
I'm confused about this, or I'm just curious
Yeah.
about this.
Mhm.
Well, I think that is a form of relationship chicken in itself because you're
Mm,
not relating talking to the other person and being
Right, you're bringing
vulnerable
in
and asking, like,
Yep.
we
yeah.
have this happens all the time. People are like, "I'm gonna consult my text, like, group text," and it's like the people there don't know this person and how they are
No.
thinking.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I could go off on a whole thing about how I don't think friends give good dating advice.
No.
No, you're right.
Well,
They
okay,
don't.
so I'd love to hear, like, what is your advice for shifting away from relationship
Mm.
chicken? Like, how can we get out of this pattern, and how can we also catch ourselves doing it in the first place?
Well, it's a question of distance. Every time you make a move, do you feel farther away from this person or do you feel closer? If you are creating distance, you are for sure playing relationship chicken. So take every opportunity as a way to close that distance. And if they don't step in and they don't also try to close the distance, then you have your information. But what will help people to get out of this game of a relationship chicken is to understand why they're dating in the first place, which is why we have this exercise called your dating North Star, which gives you clarity on why you're even doing this in the first place. And you talk about this a lot on your podcast, Talia. It's like we have to get clear on what our intentions are. What is our purpose here in dating? It's not just to go on dates. Like there is an ultimate bigger purpose. And once you are clear on that North Star, then all your actions will align towards that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the other piece too, it's like we actually have these illustrations in our book that it's
I
like
love
a
them.
relationship jar and a non-relationship jar.
Yeah.
And thinking about like when you're taking an action, is this actually bringing you closer? Like what Yue was saying, but like it could be like, I'm waiting for the text. Is that actually helping you connect with this person? No, you're sitting in
Mhm.
your like getting wrapped up in whatever thoughts that could be so far from reality instead of just sending the text. Like if you were in a healthy reciprocal relationship, you wouldn't think about like, oh, should I wait 20 minutes to text them back? You would just text them. So I think like any action, like anything that feels like me versus you. So if you can like feel that coming in, like I think we think of dates like I need to like, and again, this is all like not conscious a lot of times. You're not like, I need to win, but there is like a power control of not being the one to do things first. Like I remember when I was dating, I had this great date. I was really into this guy and I was like telling my friend about it. And he was married, he was not dating. And he's like, oh, awesome. So you sent him a text to tell him how good a time you had? And I was like, I would never do that. Like, you
Clueless.
clearly have no idea what you're talking about. He just looked at me in like disbelief because it's like, wait, you said you had a great time with this person, but you don't want to text them to tell them that. And to me, back then, when I was like caught in a lot of dating dynamics, it was like, well, I don't want them to think I'm like too available. I don't want them to think I'm desperate. Like
Yep.
those thoughts that went on. And to be honest, this actually fizzled out. And part of it probably was that he sensed there was a wall up.
Mhm. I really do not understand the fear of, like of the idea of looking desperate. It's like, you
Yeah.
Mhm.
are dating for a reason.
Right.
You have to apply like, it's not like no one's gonna look desperate for applying to a job. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, if you wanna work, you have to do that. Like, you have to
Right.
show up.
This is what makes you so different though. After we talked to you, I think Julie and I were both
Yeah.
like, she just dates differently
You're in that
because
group,
you
the
are
group we
yeah,
were
like,
talking about. Yeah.
you don't even know it, but I think your thought is like, "This is what I want, and I'm gonna go after it, and if someone doesn't give me what I want, then who cares? Like, move
Yeah.
on. Who cares
Yeah.
how
You
I'm
nailed it.
coming
That's
off or being
exactly how I
Yeah.
perceived?"
dated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
like, that's how we should date.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first place, like, we don't like to say should in any other context, but that is the one part of dating is that we should date in a way that serves us. We are at the forefront of our love lives because the only consistent person in your life forever and ever and ever, guess what, is you, and that's
yeah,
it.
for me, that was the shift. Like when I switched into that mode, that's when I met my partner. That's when I met people that, were like, I got rejected more times than ever before in my life before I met my current partner. And that was because I was putting myself out there freely and being vulnerable. I think in the past, when I was like afraid to text someone to tell them I had a good time, it was a way to have a shield up and to protect
Mhm.
myself because I could also be like, well, they didn't know I really liked them or I didn't put my all into it if you did get rejected.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think, like, my check for getting out of relationship chicken mode and into kind of just more aligned, like North Star dating mode
Mhm.
is thinking about what you want to do, like, what is your instinct telling you, and then checking that it's like, okay, like you said, does that get me closer to what I want or not? Does
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
actually is it just to protect me from being the desperate loser who wants love? Or
Right.
or is it actually or is it gonna get me closer to what I want?
I also
Yeah.
think it's like thinking about things in a partner mentality. Like where in
Mm.
dating, it's me versus you. You're always
Mhm.
like, oh, and I get it to some degree, right? This is a stranger. You don't have the trust yet. I used to go to dates and I would never put the person's name in my phone because I was like, well, I'm probably never going to see them again. That is a terrible way to go into dates, yet a lot of people do. Why would you ever like that energy that you're bringing in is basically saying like I don't see you as someone I'm ever going to see again.
Yeah.
Instead of if when I started to put that person in my phone, their name, I went in, I'm like, I'm meeting Kevin. And that was a huge shift because I'm like, oh, this is like someone that's going to be in my life, a friend, if nothing even romantic. It still is like a person, a human at the end of the day. We've just dehumanized dating so much. And if
Yeah.
you can go in with that partner mentality, even if it's for an hour, if your partner for an hour on that date, that's a different mode than if you're in this me versus you.
I love that advice, and, I think this does relate to another topic you cover in your book, which I'm so glad you talk about, which is what vulnerability is and what it
Mm,
isn't. Because when you are out of relationship chicken mode, you have to be a little vulnerable. You do have to be okay with that. So,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about what vulnerability is and how it differs from what we think it is?
And also side note, because I know she would never toot her own horn, but all the illustrations are by Julie in the book. Like, that was
No!
it's not from our publisher, it's not like some magical artist we have on the team, it's all by Julie.
I
So, the book is worth getting just for the illustrations alone, okay?
thank
I
you for
love
tuning my
them.
horn, anyway.
Wait, Julie, like, you drew this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like digitally, but yes.
Digitally, yeah, yeah. That's so cool. Amazing.
Yeah, so, back to vulnerability,
Oh my
so
god, I'm getting vulnerable.
Yeah. Poor
get
Julie.
vulnerable. The V card, right? And we think vulnerability can be a gamut of things, but a lot of times we think vulnerability is about revealing the weaknesses in ourselves and revealing the traumas that we've had in the past. Vulnerability really just means tapping into your authentic self and revealing that to the person you're with. Vulnerability is a relational skill. Vulnerability is not a one sided conversation where you're trauma dumping everything that's happened to you. It is about how do you relate to this person you're with through revealing who you are. So, an example is trauma dumping is I had this happen to me when I was 5 years old, and then this caused me to really hate men, and I felt abandoned. And now this is here we are, right?
Right.
That's trauma dumping because it has no relationship to the person you're with. But relating
Mm.
to that person in a vulnerable way is to say, I'm feeling a little anxious right now. I was excited to see you, but I do get anxious on dates, especially when I'm excited to see someone because of what's happened, because of this pivotal moment in my life. That you revealed a piece of your story, but it's in relationship to that person.
I love this example because it does illustrate how vulnerability is also kind of more about the present, like,
Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
am feeling right now. I mean, yes, like, obviously, eventually, yeah, you may wanna share things that happened in your past that are really significant down the line in a relationship, and that could be another form of vulnerability of how it affects how you show up in a relationship, but when you're dating, it's a little less relevant. And I
Yeah.
don't know why we feel the need like, I do hear from a lot of people who are like, "When do I tell them I have OCD? When
Right.
do I
Right.
tell them that I had an abusive relationship with my parents?" Or, like, something like that, like and it's like, "Okay, this doesn't define you. There
Yeah.
Hmm.
is a time and place where you will share this information, but first you need to gain trust, and how you do that is through this form of vulnerability," which you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, vulnerability is such a buzzword, and I think everyone wants to be vulnerable. And like what we hear from people, they're like, emotionally available is the number one quality, and someone that is vulnerable, and that's great. But I almost feel like we like put too much pressure on like what vulnerability needs to be, like this
Yeah.
big thing. And being vulnerable, like you said, it could just be like, I'm nerve sighted, I feel nervous and excited. You don't even have to go into like why you do, just saying that,
Right.
just showing up for the date like putting yourself out there. Sending the
Yeah.
text, I think, is vulnerable. Instead of playing relationship chicken, trying to put the shield up, telling someone you like them is vulnerable. Like all these little actions that eventually bring you closer when there is, yes, a risk. I think anytime there's a risk and you could be rejected or you could be let down, you're being vulnerable.
Yeah, I guess even by saying I'm nervous or excited on a date, someone could potentially laugh at you for that, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
you are opening that is a risk, right? They
Yeah.
probably won't. They probably would just
No.
say, "I feel the same."
But if they do, you have
Let them.
information.
Yeah.
Right, that's yeah,
Yeah.
let them, right. So, what if someone let's just say listeners, if you're going on a date this week, like, what's a way they can, implement this?
We like this thought of making your inner dialogue your outer dialogue. You may be getting to the date feeling a little nervous or feeling a little uneasy about something or feeling really excited and happy to be there. If you have that dialogue going on internally, try to recite some of it to the person you're with out loud. Just try one of the sentences that's going on in your head. Like maybe just try when you sit down to meet your date, what's the first thought that pops into your mind that you wouldn't mind telling your date? And then just say it. Like it could just be like, "Oh, I was really looking forward to meeting you, and I'm really happy to be here." That could
Right.
be it.
Not like, "I think I'm having gastric distress."
No. Still have a filter. You don't have to put every thought out there.
But if you do, and the other person's like, "Me too," then you found your soulmate.
That's a really good point, because on my first date with my now husband, we were getting boba, and our number was 69, and I, like, made a joke, and that is, like, kind of revealing of, like, my sense of humor and
Yeah.
kind of just my silly side, and maybe in another version of myself as a dater, I might not have wanted to make that joke or,
Mhm.
like, I've been a little more guarded, but that he actually thought was really funny and endearing, so, it worked in my favor, I guess, in that moment.
I think the key though to what you just said is that it felt authentic and you
Yeah.
weren't
Yes.
holding back. I think if you're like, "Oh my god, what is something witty I can reveal about myself?" and
Yeah.
it starts to get
Oh, yeah,
contrived, then
Mhm.
right.
that's not vulnerable. That's like
Mm,
like a fake vulnerability. But like with your thing, you're like it would actually feel unnatural maybe to not say it because you were like suppressing that part. So you were actually being vulnerable,
right.
taking a risk and you're like this might not land, but this
Yeah.
is my sense of humor and I'm putting
Yep.
it out there.
Right, yeah, okay, what's something we could do before a date to help us kind of be in this vulnerability mindset?
We have an energy check.
Ooh, okay.
Instead of a fit check, do an energy check. Are you in the mind space where you feel like you can bring your best self? Do you feel energized? Do you feel like you are looking forward to meeting someone new? And at the end of it all, when you can answer those questions, if you say no to most of those questions, it may be worth canceling the date, honestly, because we've
Mm,
all been on dates when someone shows up with negative energy or stress energy or energy that's just not conducive to a conversation. Wouldn't you rather they just didn't show up at all? So I think it's okay for us to check in and say, I'm probably not in the best place to be on a date right now. And I'll be honest with the person I'm going on a date with and have to reschedule.
honest I mean, that's, like, a hard conversation to have with yourself, and it is tough to cancel a date, like, before. I mean, I've done that. I definitely have done that before.
Can see if you can shift your own energy. Like I think if
Mhm,
you're coming off of work and it's stressful, have a buffer time that you're not just like
right.
someone immediately and listen
Yeah.
to music or do something to decompress because I think that alone can change up your energy. I think the reason why we feel so strongly about this, we have a whole chapter devoted to showing up in our book and we think of showing up as like what am I wearing? Where am I going? And all this like more surface level. And we're not saying like show up to dates looking like a slob. We're not saying that. But like more important than what you're wearing is the vibe you're putting out there. That's what's going to attract someone to you. And are you showing up, yeah, in your best light? That's like step one. And then step two of like, can I reveal myself and be comfortable and be authentic and open and vulnerable and put it out there and not hold back? That's how you're actually going to find the right person. And if someone's not vibing with that, like I would so much rather find that out than, like, have
Mhm.
this date persona. I think for years, I had a date persona,
Mhm.
and my friends didn't understand. They were like, "You're so social. You've no problem making friends. Like, why aren't dates moving forward?" And I look back and I'm like, "'Cause I wasn't actually, like, the person I was with my friends."
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you do talk about that in your book as well, just, like, the date version of you and kind of breaking through that, and it is hard. I think it does take practice. I think if you're new to dating, it's okay if you have a date version of yourself because dating is
Yeah.
really hard, and if
Mhm.
that's what like, I think if you're brand new to dating, like, some of this advice is, like, farther down the line in your journey because you do need to just, like, go on a date sometimes and not worry so much about, like, how you're showing up and just, like, show up on the like, physically to the
I
date.
I actually feel like though if you don't have a lot of dating experience, that could actually help you.
Yeah,
Because
I guess,
sometimes
yeah.
the more you've dated, you get in your head of, like, how it should be or how you should act.
Right,
I
right.
I feel like I want you to tell the story about Andrew.
Oh, Andrew. I wonder what Andrew's up to these days.
Well,
Should
who's
do a
Andrew?
check-in. Andrew is a guy that we did this experiment on our podcast years ago that was like a blind date. And Andrew was my blind date. And I showed up to this date super prepared. I was like, "You're pro dater, you know, if there was a PhD in dating, I thought I was it, doctor dating." And I came in, I always go into dates with a story about what happened to me that day because it made me so interesting. And I sat down, I came in with this like all this energy. And he's like entertained and he's laughing along. And in the middle of the date, he stopped me. He's like, "All right, so when is the real UA going to show up to this date?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I just got called out." And he
Wow,
is a
Andrew.
Talia's face with that was amazing.
he's a poker player, so he can read BS. And he read all the BS. I was dripping with BS. And he's like, I know you are very good at entertaining. And I know that you are an interesting person, but who's the real UA here? And if you don't want to reveal who the real UA is, if she doesn't want to show up right now, we don't have to stay for another drink. And I felt like in that moment, I felt a little called out, yes, but
Yeah.
in the best way possible because for so long I thought I needed like an Academy Award for how amazing I was on dates, how entertaining I was. And he's like, "That's not the goal here. I'm trying to get to know you." So for the second half of the date, we totally turned things around. My energy came down to his level. Not that it was low energy, but we were able to match each other and also kind of trade the authentic parts of who we are. That also ended in a really passionate makeout sesh, so that that
Great.
worked out well.
We love that. That's such an interesting story, and I think I'm really glad that you were called out, but I'm wondering, like, would you have ever gotten to a place where you were aware that the real UA was not showing
Oh,
up?
I don't know.
See, I was also in a place to receive that.
Right.
Probably a few years before, I would have been like,
Like, "Fuck
"Bye."
you."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't need a second drink, bro. Thanks.
But that changed how you dated. As someone
Yes.
that watched it from the outside, it was like the wake-up call. But I actually
Mm,
think that could alleviate people that feel like they don't know how to date. They're newer to dating. Like, they just actually don't need to overthink it as much as maybe they thought they did. Like, they just need
yeah.
to show up like their friends. Like, we had this guy that's in the Dateable community that we used to do, like, monthly coaching with. And at one time, he brought his friend to the call, just, like, randomly, and he was a totally different person, and we were like, "That's who we wanna see on dates."
Yeah.
Like, that's the person, like, you have this stiff energy on dates, but with your friend, you're relaxed, you're having fun, like, you're showing different sides, and I think people get so caught up in, "I need to act and be a certain way to attract someone," when actually what's attractive is who you are.
It's hard to get in that mindset when you don't feel that way about yourself. And also
Yeah.
when it's like weird, the stakes change on a date. I don't know what it is compared to hanging out with friends. Your friends already like you. They're already your friends. You don't need to like do anything different. But then for some reason on a date, you do feel like you have to win the other person over
Yeah.
somehow. And that's someone who maybe hasn't heard the podcast or hasn't read the book because you don't have to actually win anyone over.
Yeah.
like but that it can feel that way sometimes.
Well, I think that's the shift. Like,
Mhm.
that's when you can get into that mode of you yes, it takes it takes a lot of inner work to,
Yeah.
and that's why whenever people are like, "Well, what app should I use? What should I do to change my profile?" At some point, like, there's a point of diminishing returns on all this stuff. The
Mhm.
real movers are this. Like, this is the mover
Yes, the
to
hard
get
stuff.
so
Yeah.
comfortable with yourself that you're like, I don't care that I'm getting rejected. I think the earlier version of me when I was getting rejected over and over again, and again, rejection is just how do you view it? Like simply it's redirection. Like most of the people that I got quote unquote rejected by were just not the right person at all.
Mhm.
So an earlier version would have taken that personally, fell for what we call the validation trap, tied it to their self worth, but it takes the work to be like, "Actually, it's coming. It's just a matter of time."
Yeah, it is. It's really tough. I wanna switch gears for a second and talk about this line in your book that really resonated with me, and that is, "If you're clinging to the power dynamics, you're not looking for a relationship."
Mm.
And I was like, "Whoa." Like, I think some people are gonna have a hard time hearing that. If you're clinging to the power dynamics, you are not looking for a relationship. And I really want listeners to let this sink in because I think it's really true. Can you
Yeah.
unpack this a little bit for us?
Oh, I remember talking to a friend about this and saying that to her at one point, like
Yeah.
verbatim, because she was so caught up in all of these dynamics of like, should I wait? Should I text? Should I do what? All the stuff. And at the end of the day, if you're doing all of this, it's a game playing. It's not actually building a relationship with someone. Like we were talking about earlier, all the
Yeah.
stuff that isn't relationship chicken, of getting vulnerable, of sharing, of taking that risk and being open and doing all the things that could result in rejection. That's what actually a relationship is. I mean, I think relationships are very hard in different ways that dating is. Like, from being in a serious relationship, it opens up a lot of wounds potentially, even in the healthiest of relationships. And in a different way than I think I've experienced in the past when I was playing more relationship chicken, hedging my bets because you're being seen. And if you're not willing to be seen and you're so focused on those dynamics as a way to protect yourself, then you actually are like avoiding a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed this a lot recently. I don't know if you guys saw my post about green flags men look for. Did you see
Mm.
this?
Yes, I love that.
Thank you. A lot of people didn't love it.
Why?
There was this power dynamic discussion really came into play in the comments of this post, and if you're listening, I'll link it in the show notes. It basically was just listing out green flags that, men in the dating intentionally community shared with me, and there were things like reciprocation of
Mhm.
interests in various ways, asking good questions, curiosity, a lot of the basic stuff that everyone of any gender
Yeah.
and any sexuality looks for in a relationship, but there was a lot of issues about, like women coming to the comments being like, "I'm not gonna initiate with a guy. I
Oh,
would
we get
never
those all the
pay."
Oh,
time
yeah, all the
too.
Yeah.
time.
All the time.
We've been taught that if you initiate, then you've lost the upper hand. That if you express your emotions, then you've lost in this game. And you always want to be the one less interested in a relationship so that you are more valuable to the other person. I mean, this is like passed down for generations through our parents, through television, through entire society. But going back to your initial visual that you painted for us, which is a canoe, Talia, or a tandem bike. If you are engaged in power dynamics on a tandem bike, you're like, "I'm gonna have my partner sit back so I can steer this bike where I wanted to." You're not gonna get anywhere faster than
Or
if
you're gonna
both of
crash.
you or
Yeah.
you're gonna crash or
Fall
you're
It
gonna
over.
crash.
sounds dangerous. Yeah.
Or you'll resent your partner for
Yeah.
not pitching in, right?
Yeah.
And the only way the bike works most efficiently is when both of you are putting as much power and effort into it. So the power dynamic is we think it's like it's a me versus you mentality, but we also know this is part of the relationship chicken is like if you're trying to get in a relationship, there is no such thing as a me versus you in a relationship. So why do we bring that dynamic into dating?
Well, I think that people do bring it into relationships though.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
Mm,
unfortunately, there is like the next level of this, that you might experience in an early relationship where it's like, well, they haven't defined their relationship with me. They haven't introduced me to their parents or friends. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. I'm like, have you said you wanted this? Have
Right.
you introduced them to your friends? Like
So this was my turning point because I was the person in your comments at one point. Like I strongly believe that like I would like, I wanted to show that I wanted this person to prove that they liked me. I didn't want to
Mhm.
waste time on people that didn't. I hear that. I see that. I also had a lot of things ingrained like I would be like lesser value and like stupid stuff that comes from that. Like I don't want to look desperate or needy, all of that. The wake up moment for me was okay, if I'm in a relationship, do I wanna be, like, afraid to send someone a text message? No. I don't wanna
Mhm.
be walking on eggshells in a relationship. And I mean, it goes back to relationship chicken, like, if you're doing all that stuff to get into a relationship, it's hard to then you've now set up the relationship in that way. So
Yep.
why not just be who you are up front, attract the people that want that. You're saying that you hear from your male community that they want this. I think there's also a big difference of being the one that initiates every plan versus
Yes.
you give.
Yeah.
So I think what we've gotten before is like, well, I can't send that text because I don't want to be the one initiating. And we're like, we're not telling you to initiate every interaction. But if you give an inch, they'll go a mile. Like it's a
Right.
team effort.
So yeah, when does it turn into one-sided? Like, what's the line?
When you feel that it's one-sided, right?
Right.
I
I
think
guess there's
most
a
of us
yeah.
know.
We've all been in those situations where you're like, if I don't text them, they're probably never gonna reach out to
Yes.
me again. Like, if you're the one doing
Yeah.
everything.
I guess there's a difference between it actually being one-sided and you being afraid of it being
Yes.
one-sided.
Well,
I
Yes.
that's
think
vulnerable too,
yeah,
right?
right. I love this, the way you've talked about vulnerability and relationship chicken. I think that the 2 are just tied so well together, and, like, I hope that listeners and people who read your book will figure out how to be vulnerable, not just in the dating phase,
Yeah.
but also continue in the relationship phase, and I do think that if you're showing up vulnerable early on, it's easier down the line. Yes.
Yes.
And I did have another
Absolutely.
question about vulnerability because I think there is this, like, confusion because, again, you guys do a good job of clarifying what it is and what it isn't. But, like, I will hear from daters in early relationships, and they're like, "I don't know if they're opening up to me enough." Or,
Mhm.
like, "I don't know if I really, like they're not, like, sharing their inner world with me." And it's usually from women talking about men about
Yeah.
this. But I've
Mhm.
heard it the other way around too.
Yep.
So what do you make of that in terms of, like, being vulnerable in a relationship?
Oh, it's such a great topic that we're about to enter because we don't talk about early relationships
Right.
that much, right? And it's worth discussing because you bring in your patterns of behavior into early relationships. And that pattern is basically like you're under the assumption that other people are like you and other people are on the same timeline and journey as you and other people have experienced the same things as you, which is not true. You're two mere strangers merging your life together. And we need to recognize other people for how far they've come, not for where they are right now. So,
Mhm.
what is opening up to someone else may be closed off to
Yeah.
you. Just like what may be amazing to someone could be disgusting to you. And we need to understand in early relationships, I call it the Roomba phase because all we're doing is like getting to the parameter of our relationship and understanding where the boundaries are and then creating a blueprint. So
I
this is
love that
just
analogy.
right.
It's
This is
so true.
like
It's so real.
it's information that you don't need to act on, but you're creating a blueprint. You're feeling like, okay, still feel validated in the fact that you feel like your partner isn't opening up as much, but your partner also needs to understand what is opening up.
Yeah.
And they also can tell you how far they've tried and come to open up. What were they like a year from today? Maybe they've
Right.
come a really long way. So it's just recognizing that other people are not like you
Yeah.
and we don't need to
I
expect other
mean,
people to be like
you
us.
were like, when I first started dating my husband, I figured out very quickly that he just doesn't remember his childhood very much. Like, he just doesn't have memories. So, like, I would try to just ask him, like, what were your holidays like? Like, what'd you do? Like, after school? Like, all these, like, just not even like deep questions, just like context for his life. And he just would not remember. He just doesn't remember anything. And I'm like, at first, it frustrated me. It's like, oh, he's not opening up. And it's like, no, no, that's the Roomba scenario.
Yeah,
That's just as far as he can go. And that's
it's
it.
a
And
bad
that's okay.
memory.
Yeah, that's all right. All right,
I
fine. That's
it's
it.
It's interesting too, because what you just said about like someone's childhood and asking those questions, to me, that's what opening up feels like of like
Yeah.
getting
Mm.
to know the person. But like with my partner, he felt like because we weren't having these like more philosophical questions that we weren't opening up. And the like that some of that connection was missing. So my take to him was like, one, thank you for sharing. I think first you were
Mhm.
asking like what people can do is you need to share, but then also, like, can you initiate that too? Like, you can't
Mhm.
just say, like, I want to deepen the connection with someone or I want to get more vulnerable. Like, how do you start doing that and then seeing if they can, like, come to that level as well and inviting them into that space?
Like the canoe thing, it's a team effort, right? It's
Yeah,
like being receptive to what they can do, making sure you're opening up these conversations and also participating in them. It's like all at once.
right.
So, Julie, speaking of your partner,
Good transition.
are you still calling them your partner?
You know,
Did
it's
anything happen
funny.
recently?
So it's actually like this is going out a little later because with podcasting, you always record like,
Yeah,
there's a little buffer
we're
time.
recording
Yeah.
this the day Julie shared on Instagram that she got engaged.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
So it was funny
congratulations.
because Talia like messaged, she's like, "Can we talk about this?" I'm like, "Sure." So yeah, we got engaged. Yeah, and I guess like I haven't used fiance yet, which is interesting, but I feel like partner,
You can
I
try it now.
still
Just try it right now. Just
fiance, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like partner though still because I feel like I never really called him my boyfriend either. I always kind of went to partner because honestly, from an early stage, like we did feel like partners. And that's kind of how I knew it was
Aw.
different. Also, it didn't feel like I never used partner with other people, like even in the past. So there was always something a little different that it felt like we were more entwined in our life. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll start using fiance, but I feel like partner like encompasses it well.
I love that. So, how did you meet your partner?
So we met on Hinge in 2021, so in COVID times. And like I was saying with this, I think where I was, my mindset with dating was so different than it was years ago. And honestly, a lot of those learnings are from the podcast. It's in How to Be Dateable, and it's stuff that like you and I, if we were to look at how we dated in that time period versus when we started this podcast, it was so different. It was these questions that you're probably getting. We were asking the same stuff.
Mhm.
And I think from our experiences and following like the people that got out, like that was the shift. And I
Mhm.
don't think I would have been with my partner had I not made this because I think I prioritized different things when I met him. Like for
Mhm.
me, like consistency was number one because I got clear on that North Star. And that's not to say like I just wanted a consistent partner and like anyone would do. Like I'm not saying like
Right. That's
settle
just
or
one
anything
of the
like
few things.
it's
Yeah.
more like if they can't even pass that baseline, like I don't care what their credentials are. I don't care what the chemistry is.
Mhm.
Like if they can't even show up consistently and prioritize me, like what's the point?
Yeah, I'm with you. So, how did he propose? Or how did you guys do it?
Yeah, so I mean, I would also say it was a collaborative process. I
Yes.
think
Yay.
it's an interesting shift and like back in the day it was like women were surprised or like whoever was doing the proposing to proposal. And I feel like nowadays like when we were looking at rings, like it was all couples in there together. There were very few. I don't know what you guys did,
Yeah,
Talia, but like
we looked
yeah,
together. Yeah.
so I feel like it was like I literally saw 0 people in there by themselves, and I'm sure, like, it can happen that way. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen that way either, but
Yeah.
I personally liked the collaborative approach. It made it special. It made it feel like we were doing it together. I think even just seeing him in the store, like, reacting was, like,
Mhm.
really nice to, like, see the excitement happening. So I would say we also talked about marriage for a while, so none of this was a surprise.
I
The
don't think it
day
should be
was
a surprise,
no.
It
like,
should
at all.
not.
None of it should be a surprise. I
Oh,
guess, like, maybe
please
just
don't.
the day and the time and, like, the place
Yes,
that it
yeah, I
happens
think
maybe. Yeah.
that was the right level of surprise for
Yeah.
me. I also realized that I'm not someone that loves ambiguity, which is why I was anxious when I was dating. So I think for for
I
me,
just relate so hard.
it was funny. Well, it's not funny, but he was like he had a surgery that was happening before Christmas, so it was a pretty like low key holiday. So I was like okay, is it happening before the surgery or after?
Just to be
So
clear.
and I think so I actually saw myself getting a little anxious, and not because, like, I doubted that it would happen or anything, but I think it was, like, there were high stakes again, and, like, I
Okay,
was like,
dude, no,
yeah.
once the ring has been purchased or once you go ring shopping, the anxiety is so high,
Why?
even though you know what's happening. I don't know.
Yes.
I
Really?
also was
I
yes.
okay,
I couldn't sleep. I
that
couldn't
makes me
Wait,
sleep
feel
why?
so
honestly.
much better.
Because you just
I
don't know when it's happening? Is that why?
I think
Yeah,
it's
I
that,
don't
but
know.
I think for me, it was like it feels so close and it feels like it's happening, and I don't want to be, like, blindsided in any way, and there was no
Oh.
reason that again, there was, like, nothing that my partner was doing that would indicate that, but it was, like, my own shit coming up.
It is just such a weird thing. I didn't expect that to hit me like that either, but it totally did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how did it happen? What was his
Yeah.
plan?
Okay, so once I found out that there was a window, I was like, "Okay." So then the day it happened on a Sunday, and that morning I was like, "Okay, I think this is happening today," because we were going on a hike that we had talked about, but he was like, "Oh, I need to go to Whole Foods first in the morning and, like, get some stuff," and I was
It's like,
just
"Baby, you
like,
never go to Whole Foods. What's going
I
Yeah,
on?"
was like,
Whole
"We
Foods.
always go together," and I was like, "Do you want me to come with you?" And he's like, "No, it's okay," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm not gonna ask too much, but whatever." And then, like, he's like, "Oh, we'll do an 8 o'clock dinner," and it was, like, a Sunday night, so I'm like, "We don't normally go out for dinner
It's
on
late.
Sunday night." So I was like, "Okay," like, if it's
Mm.
something's either happening, like, on the hike or later. And then I saw him packing up, like, a ton of blankets and, like, more than the average hike. So I'm like, "Okay, I think something's happening." And then on the way, he's like, "Okay, we do need to stop somewhere, and, like, a little bit of the surprise is gonna be ruined because I might need you to, like, run in so I, like, don't have to look for parking." So we pulled up to this restaurant.
Collaborative.
Yeah, collaborative, we're on the canoe. And and it actually was funny because this restaurant is where we had, like, on an early date, we had a picnic over in COVID times, and one of the things that stood out for him too is I went on a lot of picnic dates, and everyone showed up with, like, nothing. They just showed up, and they're like, "I'm here," and I'm like, "Thanks for 0 planning." But
This is
for
not a
him
picnic. It's
for
just
Just
meeting
him
out in public.
calling.
yeah, he took my sandwich order. He showed up with, like, a whole basket of things and blankets and drinks and all the stuff, and I was like, "Okay, this is someone that put in effort and was, like, intentional about this date." So anyways, he found our sandwich order from the 3rd date we had, and he had ordered sandwiches from the same place that was actually at a new location, so it did throw me off a little. I wasn't
Oh,
expecting
yeah.
to, like, pull up, and I was like, "Oh, this place is here?" So got the sandwiches, we went on the hike, and then we got to this beach, and I was like, "Okay, I think it's happening here." And then, it had been raining really hard, so there's, like, usually, like, a couple pebbles that you cross over, but it was, like, like, a lot of
Oh,
water,
no.
and this, like, dad was, like, put down, like, a log for his, like, daughter to go over, and my partner's like, "Do you think you are okay doing that? Like, I don't wanna make you do it." And I'm like, "I'll do it." So we went over, and it was
You're like, "For the
actually
ring, I'll do
yeah.
anything."
I know, and he's like he actually said that, he's like, "I don't want you to feel like you have to do it to, like, you know, like, to make my plan work kinda thing." But so we went over, it was fine, and then it was, like, this pretty, like, there was no one really there because the weather was, like, kinda not so great, but then it, like, miraculously cleared up, and yeah, he
Just for you.
proposed, and we had our picnic, and just yeah,
Aw,
it was
that is so
perfect.
sweet. Oh my gosh, we love, like, a nature Bay
Oh
Area
my god.
proposal.
Oh, very much
Yes, yes,
so.
fellow
Yes.
Bay Area, yes, you get
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's so
So
beautiful. I'm so
beautiful.
happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. It was a great day, and, I think it's, like, one of those things that I don't like saying, like, getting engaged or marriage is the end goal because I really don't believe it is, but I do think it for me, it was important, like, I did want that next stage in a relationship, and I think just, like, being able to, like, ask for that and
Mhm.
tell someone I wanted that, that was vulnerable, and that was putting it out there, so it's, like, another example how why I think it's important to get vulnerable in dating is because it doesn't
Yes.
actually end, it only the stakes kinda go up and things get more, so
Mhm.
might as well practice now when who cares if you see the person again?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for leaving us with that little nugget of advice and sharing your story. And congratulations on your book again. I mean, I really want
Thank
people
you.
to buy it. It's really solid book, super easy to read, and I highly recommend it. I just hope everyone gets this. So
Or
yeah.
listen to, because it's
Or listen
audiobook
to,
version
right? Oh,
too.
right.
Yeah.
Audiobook as well.
So where can listeners connect with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, howtobedateable.com, all the book info is there. You can actually take the quiz that's in the book as well there, and dateablepodcast.com or wherever podcasts are. We're everywhere at Dateable Podcast on the internet as well.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Talia.
Thanks, Talia.